fully understand the magnitude of the election this year, I have to take you back to 9/11. It might be pretty scary for some people, and once again, I ask you to do the investigating yourself and educate yourself. There's a lot of information on the internet. Of course, you won't be hearing any of this on the news media, but on the internet you can find all of this that I'm going to tell you is true. So let's start with the buildings. The Twin Towers collapsed after they got hit by the planes. Now, I was watching that and I thought, how the heck did that happen? Those buildings went down like that fast, and for what reason? There were explosives in the building, and all day long I heard the reporters telling us the explosives have gone off. People are hearing bombs going off. They interviewed people that were witnesses to bombs being set off. So had they been a little bit smarter, they might have said that, well, the terrorists must have put bombs in the building, but they didn't. They denied that there was any bombs and then there was any explosions. And there's so much proof that there was. Why did the buildings collapse? Well, they said it was from fuel from the airplanes. Well, fuel from the airplanes burns white, and fuel from thermite burns a reddish orange. If you watch the film, you'll see the white smoke go off almost immediately, and then you'll see the thermite going off later on, a little bit later on. The smoke changes colors. Now you have to think to yourself, there was people standing on the ledges, on those steel beams, waving papers and scarves and whatever they could get their hands on. If the steel was so hot that it would melt the entire building, how could they stand on the beams? And there's all kinds of pictures of people standing on the beams. So that just is a little common sense. Thermite is the only thing that can melt steel beams and make them curl. And there's pictures, I know they whisked away all the evidence and took it to China and melted it right away, which is also a big red flag, because why did they get rid of all the evidence so quickly? And something that huge, wouldn't we preserve the evidence? They didn't. The steel beams were curled, and thermite is the only known substance to get hot enough to curl steel beams. Demolition style. There was cuts made to the beams at the bottom of the building at an angle, and that's how they do it when they do demolition, is the angle cuts. You need to know that Bush's brother was in charge of the security for that building and had just gotten hired on to the security months before. They did close down the weekend prior to 9/11, and there was people going in and out carrying strange things and strange things going on. People that were in the building have testified that there was loud construction noises going on throughout the week, and dust every time they came in the morning, thick layers of dust all over the place. There were certain floors that were forbidden to go to, and the elevators wouldn't even open the doors on those floors. I want to go on to the owner of the building. That was Larry Silverstein. And Larry Silverstein purchased that building months prior and purchased it for millions. And after 9/11 was done, he collected billions off of the insurance. He had written into the insurance policy acts of terrorism, especially terrorists flying planes into the building. Now, that's a big red flag. Why would he want the buildings destroyed like that? Well, he was required to do a facelift on the building because there was asbestos in the walls. And it was going to cost a tremendous amount of money for him to get the building up to code. And so it was easier for him to destroy it and rebuild. And now, he had signed a 90-year lease on the building. And so now he's reconstructing a huge, well, actually the largest real estate con in history. And is going to make a fortune off of the new buildings and the rental amounts that he's going to be putting on those buildings that they're replacing the Twin Towers with. When he went to collect the insurance, he insisted that he got to collect double, because it was 2 acts of terrorism on the buildings and 2 buildings. So he doubled his insurance policy money. He also was interviewed saying, it was such a horrific loss of life that we decided to pull the building on Building 7. Now, a lot of you don't know about Building 7. Building 7 was a third building that went down that same day, and it went down demolition style too. But it wasn't hit by a plane. So what's up with that? And what was in that building? See, the building was the headquarters for the CIA, Enron. All of their material and evidence and financial records and things were there. And it's a little bit strange that the only thing we saw in that building was a couple of fires coming out of one window, but yet it went down demolition style too. Now, how the heck does that happen? It took Bush so long to even agree to do an investigation, and when he was questioned about the events that occurred that day, he insisted on being questioned along with Cheney. They would not agree to be questioned separately, and they would not go under oath when they were questioned. There's still 7 terrorists that were on that list that are alive and well. In fact, one of them died prior to 9/11, wasn't even alive. So how did they get the terrorist names? And how did that happen so quickly? You know, that's another thing. It was all over the news. Oh, we know who did it. We have the evidence. They found a passport that was in perfect condition. I mean, everything in the building was completely demolished. There was no sign of anything. Not a piece of a desk, not a piece of a phone. But this passport came out unscathed. I mean, somehow it miraculously came out of the terrorist pocket, through the explosion, and fell free fall from the building without even getting scorched. Another thing, they found all these Korans and training books on how to fly commercial airplanes, and pictures with names and lists. Whenever the evidence is that obvious, you got to question it, because these people that were so smart that they could figure out how to get on this plane and take it over and fly it into a building and do all this without any hitches at all in their plan. Somehow they were stupid enough to leave a Koran at a bar the night before, where they were bragging loudly about how they were going to be doing something horrible and fondling strippers and making themselves noticeable. Now, would that really happen? And they were reported to have been in a different state altogether. Why wouldn't they be where they were going to be the next morning? I mean, why would they be, hundreds of miles away and have to come back up to where they were going to catch the plane? Doesn't make sense. They also forgot a suitcase in a hotel, and in the suitcase was a training manual on how to fly commercial airplanes and another Koran. And of course they left Korans in the rental cars that they used to go to the airport. Now, why wouldn't they take a taxi cab? I mean, why would they all take separate rental cars and leave their Korans in them? These people had a whole lot of Korans to be laying around. So if it wasn't those people that were flying those planes, then who was flying those planes? Well, they actually did catch Israelites that had filmed the event perfectly from all angles, and that were dancing after it was over, and had a van full of bombs and bombing material in it. They caught these guys. We didn't hear a lot about that on the news either, but they caught them. They all failed their polygraph tests, and then they were released and sent back to Israel. I was always under the impression that if America was under attack, the first thing it would do is whisk the president off to safety. But yet he was in a school talking to elementary kids. And we see the film on the news of them coming in and reporting to him that the second plane had hit. While the Americans were burning and dying, he calmly sat and talked about his pet goat. There is an enormous amount of evidence of his ties, the whole Bush family's ties, actually, to Bin Laden and the Bin Laden family, and heck, Grandpa Bush helped put Hitler in power. And Daddy Bush was financed, his whole campaign was financed by the Bin Laden family. And George W., well, he got money from the Bin Ladens to get his oil company going. So there was a whole lot of stuff going on between those two families. In fact, the day following 9/11, every plane was grounded and people were not allowed to go anywhere. No planes were allowed off the ground except for the president's plane, Air Force One. And they were whisking the Bin Laden family and relatives off to safety. So you got to ask yourself this. If Bin Laden was responsible and they knew that, why the heck would they be rushing his family off to safety? I mean, it's okay for us to go kill thousands of people that didn't even know what happened that day by bombing their country, but we're going to protect their leaders' family? All right, let's go on. Vice President Cheney. Cheney was in charge of the command center for the Air Force that day. Now, this is the first time in history that any vice president has taken that right. He did have a right to do that, but nobody's ever done it. And he took over that right that day to be in charge of the command center. Now, they were running exercises at the command center, doing training exercises about planes hitting tall buildings, in fact, in New York City. And so when they actually reported that there was a plane, another plane that was coming in, you can hear tapes of them saying, is this real world or exercise? Because it kept them confused. They didn't know what was going on, if it was just a training exercise or if it was really happening. Now, they all told us, Condoleezza Rice, Cheney, George Bush, all got on there and said, who would have imagined that they would take a plane and run it into the building? I think they imagined it because they were doing training exercises pertaining to that. So, another big red flag. Cheney also, there was tapes of a soldier coming in. Sir, the plane is 15 minutes out. Coming back in. Sir, the plane is 10 minutes out. And then he comes back in. Sir, the plane is 5 minutes out. Do the orders still stand? And Cheney looks at him and said, of course they stand. Have you heard anything different? What was that all about? It's also something that needs to be known is that Cheney's connection to Halliburton. Halliburton was the company that got all the contracts to go over there and rebuild after we had destroyed all those buildings. Big money influence there. Big money. There's such a thing as called put options, and put options is a bet that the stocks are going to fall. And there's a normal movement in the market that doesn't vary a whole lot unless somebody's got inside information and knows what's happening. And the put options on United Airlines and American Airlines, I think it went up 600%, or something like that. It was just an incredible amount of money that was put on the put options for those two airlines. So somebody had inside information that those planes were going to be crashing and that the stock market was going to fall. The stocks for those planes was going to fall. So who stand to gain from that? And there's a list of companies, including Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, I can't remember all of them, but there's a list of companies that were the collectors of all those millions of dollars. So it needs to be known that those companies are owned by the elite that I've spoken about in my last video. And it's the one world order, the old men with the 1% in the world that have all the money. There's many families that make up that group of people, and they're known as the bankers and the ones that own and run the Federal Reserve. So anyway, there's so much more information out there than what I've already given you. Please just use this as an eye-opener to do some investigating on your own. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you later. Bye.